Hi there, and welcome to One Idea Away, not just a podcast, but a community and ongoing conversation meant to inspire and empower individuals to live more fully, deeply, and consciously. Let's jump into today's episode right now. Hey there, everyone, and welcome back to the show. Have you ever reached a point in your life where in the back of your mind, you heard that whispered question, is this all there is? Perhaps it was more of a quiet little thought of, I thought there'd be more than this, or this isn't quite what I thought life would be. These are questions and thoughts that usually start to surface when we realize that we're just not quite as fulfilled, not quite as happy or as peaceful as we thought we would be in life. It's not that anything's wrong per se. It's just that there's this place inside of us that's a bit unsettled, that's stirring perhaps. It's that we're looking for something even if we don't know what it is. I work with a diverse group of clients, and I'm also fortunate enough to work with coaches in training, and I get to see how various people from different walks of life answer these questions and deal with these different thoughts as they come up, as well as the unsettled feelings. Some are just starting out on the journey, trying to figure out what these questions and insights even are. Others, particularly those going through coach training, are a little bit further along. Not that they've got to figure it out. It's just that they're on a path and they're traveling it with their heads up and their eyes more open than ever before, so that they can ask more questions, be more curious, and see what it is that emerges for themselves as well as for their clients. It's really, truly amazing how many twists this path of life offers us. It's also incredible the experience that this journey can be as well. I bring this up because I have a guest on today's show that I haven't brought on the podcast before, despite the connection that we have. You see, the questions I just posed are the starting point for my guest's newest book, Uncovering the Life of Your Dreams. And my guest is my longtime business partner at iPEC, the founder, Bruce D Schneider. I wanted to bring Bruce on today, not only to chat about the book, but really some of the deeper story that's going on behind this character, as well as how the story emerged, perhaps evolved is another way of thinking about this. See, central to what we do at iPEC, as well as the One Idea Way initiative and community, is about helping people raise their consciousness, to see their lives, their experiences, their relationships, even themselves, in a whole new light. It's to explore where their paths can take them, and to travel that path with a supportive, accepting community that's right there by their side. And Bruce's latest book opens up some of the deepest principles and pathways that we've ever shared before. And so with that, let me more properly introduce Bruce D Schneider. Bruce is the founder and chairman of iPEC, which is the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. It's the premier coach training and certification organization in the world at this point. He's the author of the best-selling book, Energy Leadership, the brand new release of Uncovering the Life of Your Dreams, the focus of our chat today. He's also been a pioneer in the field of coaching and consciousness for nearly 20 years now, and is also a bit of a contemporary philosopher, which I think you're going to get a sense of in today's conversation. So with that, Bruce, welcome for the first time to One Idea Way.
Yeah, thanks, Luke. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really surprised that I haven't been on your podcast before, but this is a perfect time.
Well, you know, it's a tough show to get on, so I'm glad we could.
I need a better publicist.
You do, exactly. So what I did want to do is I wanted to dive right into things today, because it's been 10 years since your last book, which kind of begs the question of why now? After 10 years, why now? Why this book?
Yeah, it's that time of the decade. I mean, basically, I'm a one book a decade person. The first one was kind of the launch of my consciousness journey. It was called Relax, You're Already Perfect. And it really was the precipice to the beginning of iPEC. And it was rather deep, maybe a little ahead of its time. And I needed something I felt that would better represent our coaches, our coaching philosophy, something that was much more practical. Energy Leadership, fantastic bestseller, turned iPEC into a very renowned name. This one was very different, though. Uncovering the Life of Your Dreams was more personal. So it was kind of full cycle from the first book, with an additional 20 years of insights and philosophies and experiences. This one is the result of a third awakening, so to speak, that I've had, that has just opened the door to a new world of possibilities, figuratively and literally, which is why the book is written in a different type of setting, in a different world, so to speak. So I think that it's also a little ahead of its time. But I think the world is more ready for something like this than ever before.
So actually share a little bit about that, maybe that third awakening, because there is an evolution for you as well as this character that's represented in the book, and share a little bit about where that comes from.
The awakening is the result for me of complacency. It seems that in my first awakening, as many people know, as you well know, was the result of a near-death experience from a car accident. And my life before that was just night and day compared to where it is now. Just had no clue. Not that I have much of a clue now, but at least I have an idea, maybe even a good one. So the understanding that we go through these phases in our lives, and if we pay attention to them, we can get a lot out of them. So the second phase, again, was a little more practical, but it was also after a second awakening. And this is where I did really well after the first book, and iPEC was doing really well. And all of a sudden I said, is this all there is? Is this success? And I felt a little bit of a burning that I had to do something else, and the company needed it. I had a lot to say. The message that we've been using was one that coaches were working with clients and getting tremendous success, needed to be written down. So that was energy leadership. This one came as a result of a personal crisis. Again, prompted from the same question. Is this all there is? Or exactly in my situation, is there anything else? Yeah. Is there anything else for me to do? What could it be? And I went into a real dark place, a place of introspection, a place of isolation. I changed a lot of things in my life, and I didn't actually, and I still don't think those changes were necessarily better, but it was a very powerful, cathartic, transformative process. And after now 40 years of consciousness work, the culmination of which is written in this book, I feel like it has a different goal. I do believe people could transform their lives by reading it. They can experience so many things that they've never seen before, see themselves that they never have before. For me, the purpose was simply to write it. The first book was to launch a company. The second book was to really make it a force and put it on the map. I have no attachments, no outcomes, no expectations for this particular book. I just had to say what I had to say. And if I didn't say it, I felt like literally I was going to die, whether it was a spiritual, emotional, or mental death. Even physically, I felt like something was wrong. Things weren't working properly, and I had to get it out. And I'm so happy I did. I think that this is probably the best thing I've ever written in terms of being able to express myself and have fun with something and be creative. And I think people are really going to enjoy it. Yeah. I always write books that I would like to read. And I know that some of the things that you read, I mean, you're an avid reader and you can go through a book in a half a day and you'll just zip through. I need to be entertained. Yeah. So when I read a book, if I could turn the pages and get something deep out of it, it's got me. That was my goal with this one.
Nice. There's something you bring up here, and I want to dive a little further into this because I think it's important for people to understand one of the ways in which you can enter into this world, so to speak, of what's presented, the story that's presented in Uncovering the Life of Your Dreams. You describe it as having hit a place in your life where there was complacency that was kicking in. Interestingly enough, when I read it, part of what I had gone through and part of what I've experienced is this sense of burnout. Which technically is a very different experience, and yet same question was going on. Exactly the same thing.
It doesn't matter what the experience is. It's just your inner voice telling you something needs to change. Something is not working or something is missing. And when you listen to that voice, regardless of what the message is that, and the way that voice comes to you, that's when you have the ability to uncover the life of your dreams.
Yeah. So the other piece that I wanted to go into, which is not something you said, but it's something that we've had conversation on before, is that part of what you've gone through for a number of years is that you reached a point where much of the purpose that you had set out for yourself had been achieved. meaning whether that be business or other forms of success and things like that. And I think it's an interesting one because while the journey may be different and what you were achieving for yourself might have been different, I think there's a lot of individuals out there that find themselves in this position of 10, 15, 20 years go by. They've achieved some of the career success that they want, maybe some of the material success that they want, maybe some of the relationship success that they want. Maybe with good fortune, they've got the house, the 2.5 kids, the dog, and the fenced-in yard, and it's there. And all of a sudden, when they have that achievement of purpose, as it were, they're looking around and going, "Uh-oh, now what? Where am I?"
Yeah, but they don't look for long. I find that the tendency with a lot of people, if not 99% of people, is to find a distraction, find something else to take their mind off their inner voice and to block it out. It could be anything. Most of the things that people do when they've reached that level are rather positive, some sort of hobby, but they attach themselves to something that is a major distraction for them, something that they can get themselves into. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think that's really cool. I think that's just an opportunity to explore new experiences. There's no experiences that are better than any other. However, you can still do that. You can pursue whatever you want in life. If you do it awakened, with your eyes open, you see a much fuller, at least for me, a much fuller, a much deeper, a much richer experience in whatever you do. So it's okay to feel that desire to achieve goals, to start anew, to achieve what you've been working on for a long time. There's just a difference between doing it awake and asleep. As you remember, 20 years ago, I shared there's 3 types of people. There are people who are thermometers. This is most people in the conscious community. These are people who are aware that there's something going on. They report, just like a thermometer, they report the temperature around them. So they're conscious. They know there's something going on and they talk about it. There are the sleepers. Those are people who tiptoe through life hoping to make it safely to death without causing too much trouble. So sleepers are people who are unaware of the temperature. They're stuck in illusory worlds that prevent them from achieving happiness, health, wisdom, and wealth. So they block their own inner strength, their own inner power due to fear, worry, doubt, or simply lack of knowledge or lack of potential, lack of ideas. Then, of course, there's the thermostats. Thermostats are the people who control the temperature. Those are people who are spiritually conscious and actually, and I don't mean control the experiences they have, they're always aware. They're always in control, which is very different than having to control. And so I think more people, when I first started writing 20 years ago, there was a lot of thermometers, there were a lot of sleepers, and very few thermostats. Now, there's still a decent amount of sleepers, but not as many as there used to be. There's still a growing population now of thermostats. These are people that are now looking much more deeply into who they are and why they're here. And the population of thermometers, the middle group, is exploding. That's what this community is about. That's what One Ideal Way is about. It's about giving those people an opportunity to speak, an opportunity to explore, a supportive environment to grow, to be able to control the temperature around them, and to have, again, richer, fuller experiences.
Part of just 2 things. One of the things that you brought up before is just the sense of it's not so much about maybe what you're experiencing or what you're doing as you're experiencing, but that as you start to move down this path of awakened, it's how you experience what you're experiencing. And it just really changes the way that you orient towards the world, what you see within the world. It's almost, and I can't think of another analogy other than to say it's almost as if you notice more of this vibrancy, this vibrant color, this vibrant sensation of what life is, even if you're doing many of the same things that you've always done. You just see it, perceive it, and feel it very, very differently. The other, which I think is also interesting, is as you described, it seems like with the growth of the human potential movement, the consciousness movement, the cultural creative movement, mindfulness movements, those types of things, more and more people are asking these questions, looking for something more, deeper, other than maybe what they have experienced previously. So it's leading to some very interesting conversations. I wanted to use that as the backdrop because I think that informs a lot about the main character of this book in terms of how he is kind of questioning life, trying to start to notice maybe there is a different way. And then a very interesting journey ensues. Is probably maybe an easy way of putting it at this moment. The two parts that I did want to bring up and then talk a little bit about some of the meat and potatoes, as it were, that's in the book as well. Two concepts. One had to do with uncovering, the other dreaming. I want to start with the latter first. Why did you use dreaming as not just a part of the process, but even a part of the understanding or philosophy that tells this tale?
It's a metaphor just like everything else in the book. And the metaphor of the dream is the alternate world, the alternate reality. And I think that most people would say that in their waking state, this is real, and in their dream state, it's a fantasy, and I'm questioning that. Now, I'm not saying that this isn't real or that is, but I'm saying, what if? What if your entire life was a dream, and you just haven't yet awakened to the reality of that? And if you pay attention to your dreams, you can get some tremendous insights. I like dream work simply because we're not as distracted by all the physical senses. So there's a lot of information that can come to you. Now, certainly, and it's mentioned in the book many, many times, there are not different realities and different worlds. It's all one. However, as we explore our dreams deeply, we find aspects of ourselves that are more connected to high consciousness. And in that state, we're able to ask questions. We're able to get answers. We're able to get insights. Not that we couldn't get them here. It's just that we're more distracted here. So it's just a little bit more challenging to do so.
So part of this process of waking up is this process of uncovering. And so, a lot of people have probably read the books, the articles, the blog posts, and social media posts that is about discover your purpose, find your inner self. It's these terms of discovering and finding and identifying. You use uncovering. Why?
People have been brainwashed to believe that there's always something better, something to seek, something to grow towards, discover, find, accomplish, reach. These are all driving forces that allow us to get up in the morning and say, hey, I'm excited, there's something to do, and it's wonderful. However, it's another form of distraction to just constantly do, and not to experience life being in the moment. So the idea of uncovering was simply to reveal what is already there. It doesn't mean you have to do anything to get there. You don't have to achieve it. You don't have to work towards it. It's just about sitting back, quieting your mind, being, waiting, and listening. When you uncover, just like the statue of David was created by Michelangelo, by chipping away everything from a block of stone that David was not. We have built a tremendous facade around ourselves. Granite, strong, powerful, reinforced by all of our beliefs, all of our experiences, all of our social interactions. This image of ourselves is just a block. It is not the truth. We have so many labels, so many attachments, so many ideas about who we are, and every one of those is limited. So as we begin to chip away and uncover more of what's underneath, we start releasing. We start letting go. We start recognizing that all these things that have defined us are those same things that limit us. And if we really want to understand our potential, if we really want to know the truth, then it's time to look at everything that we think we are and ask, how true is this? And as you continue to strip away all the things that are not truth, you're left with truth. That's the process of uncovering.
So the one piece I need you to go a little further into is that the things that have defined us are the very things that limit us. to talk a little further in that regard, because I think in some instances it's easy to associate that to maybe negative things that we did not want, that we feel have defined us in some way. But that's not the whole story. Even the things that we feel really good about and have used to define us, you're also saying limit us. Talk a little more to that.
Sure. Well, you use the word story. That's all it is. It's a story. There's negatives, there's positives, there's good, there's bad, there's accomplishments. I've done this, I've done that, I've gone there, I have this. All those things that we say are limiting, because we are unlimited beings. Every time you add something past the words I am, you limit yourself, because what you're saying is, if I am this, you're also saying I am not that.
Yeah.
So even something as ridiculous, this will be a ridiculous statement, I am a fireman. What that means is I am also not a fireman. Okay? So by saying what I am, I automatically dictate what I am not. I am now educated, which means I am not uneducated. Every time that you say what you are, you limit yourself. You limit yourself by the types of beliefs that you have, that you've gained over the years. You limit yourself by the things that you're attached to, whether it's money, whether it's certain types of relationships, whether it's fun, whether it's values. All those things limit you. And that's what the ego does. It seeks to individualize us. It seeks to create a comfortable place that we can live in this body and say, hey, I matter, I belong. All those things are powerful. And yet, sooner or later, if you're willing to listen, there's going to be a voice. Some people listen to it, some people ignore it, but it gets louder and louder as we get older, as we get more open, as we get wiser. And it comes to a point where if you do not listen to that voice that's telling you that your life is an illusion, a facade that you created, something is going to break down. Yeah. Because you're no longer connected with that voice that resonates at a very high level of energy. If you can connect with that high level of energy, life is very different. Again, I don't mean better. Yeah. People get confused, and a lot of people think, is this all there is? And what that question means, can I get more out of life? Well, in a sense, you can, if your more means deeper, fuller, seeing this instead of this. That's more. It's not necessarily better. And people sometimes go on a journey and they find out, hey, I'm aware. Is this all there is? But I can tell you from decades of this work, many other people have gone through this and other processes, regardless of whether it's good or bad or pleasurable or painful, I can't even imagine what life would be like, sleepwalking again and just becoming numb to the truth. And I don't think it's even possible. I think that when you get to a point where that voice is so loud, there's no way to turn it off.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've said that before, that once you start to tap into certain things, there's really no way to put the blinders back on and put your fingers back in your ears so you can't hear it anymore. It just doesn't seem to work that way. And I think the other thing that you were also just tapping into is that when we're not paying attention to that voice that's emerging inside, one of the things that, for everybody listening, what you may end up feeling is literally like you're getting pulled in two different directions, because you've got this life that's holding on to you, meaning the life that you already know, the identifications that you already know, that's kind of holding you and just, wait, stay here, we're comfortable, it's okay, let's get to status quo. And you've got this other voice that is prompting you to play a different game, let's say, and to live in a slightly deeper context. And you can feel the pressure of that. And it does emerge. And I guess that's part of what I wanted to then get into, is this idea of how do we uncover more so we can hear that voice and hear it from a place of calm and investigate it and be curious with it. And even though it's exciting, not be afraid of it either, because it can bring up fear. So just before we turn to a little bit more about those portals that help us deepen into that conversation, one of the other aspects that sets us up for this, which I think was really intriguing, is if you could say a little bit about the characters in this novel. because the characters are, I would say, more than what they seem. And I think they provide a different way that each of us as individuals can recognize and look at the people in our lives differently.
The characters are all representations and metaphors in themselves. They are archetypes, meaning I pick different people, including you and Dorothy and Toto. Everybody that has an impact on my life is somehow in this, but not as themselves. Characteristics, personality traits come through a very little bit, but mostly they are representations of different aspects of myself. And so you and Liz Fish and almost everybody at iPEC and friends and relatives, they all represent different aspects of me. And as I explore myself through these dreams, I look at different aspects of me and I say, what can I learn from that? How can I grow from that? So the character, the main character himself, Scott Billings, is a pseudonym of mine. And I've used that for many years because it was just easier to make reservations at restaurants than to say Bruce Schneider. What? Where does this S? That's even why I added the D in the middle a long time ago, but you know that story. So Scott Billings, they never asked me to repeat that. They know what it was. So it was kind of an alternate reality. And I thought, how appropriate, put Scott in the world of alternate reality, and let's tell the story from his perspective. So that's the main character. And yes, as he and we all go through these portals, it uncovers a very different world and a really interesting world that we all feel comfortable with, and yet we didn't even know it exists. So I think that's fascinating. It's the book itself was just quite a journey. We talk about the portals, which I know you wanted to bring up, and they're really only milestones, markers. So we have the portal of awareness, we have the portal of acceptance, we have the portal of knowing, being in the moment. We have the portal of freedom. So all these experiences are different aspects of wholeness, just like all the colors are different aspects of pure white. They're separate, but they're never apart. And so as people explore the book and just go into presence of the moment. What is it like to be in the moment? And they start asking themselves, when am I not in the moment? That's the uncovering process. I don't claim to be an expert in truth. I can only share ideas. I think I'm maybe just one idea away from ultimate truth, but I'm not sure. Maybe I got it. But I am an idea in what is not the truth. I am an expert in what is not the truth. That's what I've spent my entire life destroying, is the illusions, is the limitations. That's why I built the coaching training program, because I was frustrated by all the people that were unhappy because they lived limited lives based on the image of themselves that was created, not even by them, by all the people around them.
So, and I think the example, the metaphor of the portals is an interesting one, because you and I have talked about this in the past as well, is that if we think of them as access points, right? So there are ways of being able to access this deeper space, call it consciousness or whatever your word is that you want to use to embrace this wholeness of what we're describing. And it's one of those where, and I even felt my own experience of this in reading the book and how it deepened with this, is just that sense of wherever you are, whatever you're experiencing, you can begin to kind of walk through, okay, now, is this something where awareness may help me understand it more? Is this something where acceptance may reveal something more to me? And so on throughout it, because you are separating either what it isn't, what isn't working, or what have you, and that begins to help reveal a little bit more about, well, maybe it's this.
Yeah, and I think for people who do like goals, if you experience a portal, and let's say it is the portal of acceptance, you could spend a day, a week, or a decade or two on mastering acceptance. Once you have it, once you really have it, then you move to the next one. Yeah. By the time you're through all 5, which could take a week, a month, or a lifetime, you're enlightened. There is nothing left. You have gotten everything, and you have truly uncover the life of your dreams. Now, let me say something about that, because that's even confusing.
Yeah.
When I say uncovering the life of your dreams, it doesn't mean all the things you've ever dreamt about in your awake state. It means the unlimited potential that exists within your dreams. The ability to experience everything without compromise, without limitation, without physical limitation, emotional limitation. You could do anything in your dreams. You are freedom in your dreams. You are awareness. You are acceptance. You are all these things. You are consciousness. And so to experience that level of ultimate clarity, of truth in your waking state is what it means by living the life of your dreams, living the life that you can live within your dreams in your waking state. So you have to go to sleep to wake up.
Yeah.
And then when you wake up, you can dream again.
It is an interesting way that we go through kind of this swinging between what we thought was waking and dreaming and back. It's interesting how this isn't about, and I'll just use the analogy of this is not the go meditate in a cave type of process. This is there's times for reflection and introspection, but then how do we bring it back in to the everyday reality of what life is for each of us? Because most of us do not get to live, on the beach or in the cave or in that regard. It is really about how do we fully integrate this, and it's an interesting process and cycle.
Yeah, and when you think about the idea that you have to meditate in a cave or go on a beach or on a journey, you've also created a limitation, an idea that this is the way it has to happen. Yeah. Why not at a bowling alley? Why not become awakened, while you're eating pizza at a movie? I mean, I guess they actually, there's some places that allow you to
could do that.
Yeah. It could. That would be the life of my dreams. Anyway, so yeah, but it is a very practical application to consciousness, meaning spend a few minutes a day meditating, perhaps. Mm-hmm. Maybe be a little more mindful when you eat, when you're watching a movie, when you're talking on a podcast, so you don't combine the two. Be a little more aware in the moment. Just little bits and pieces will allow the process to uncover for you. The most important aspect of the uncovery process is to continually ask, what is illusion? So how have I limited myself? What is not real? What have I accepted to be truth that is not really truth? What is true for me, but not necessarily the truth? That's the process. And that's what I really recommend to people. Yeah. Just take any question like that, ask it in your dreams, do it in meditation, journal it, share it with like-minded people in a community, talk to your coach about it. Whatever it is, get that process going by simply performing a little of that self-inquiry. Find that to be most helpful.
Excellent. So just before we start to turn and kind of bring things around, kind of full circle to conclude, let's talk about just one of the portals, just to give everybody a little bit of sense of what these contain. And you already brought up the portal of acceptance, so why don't we go there? What is it? Because acceptance is something, I think it's a very interesting term right now. We see acceptance brought up in a lot of different circles, meaning a lot of different things, whether it be all the way to the point of compassion and how we can use it in that regard. We've heard about it in terms of surrender, and we've heard about it as kind of acquiescing, almost like, oh, okay, well, resignation within our lives. How do you mean acceptance? When we talk about this being a portal to uncover more of ourselves, what does that mean to you?
It can be all those things you mentioned, 100 things more. There's one thing that people really don't consider, though. If we think about the universe as consciousness itself, if we think about it as all-knowing and we are one with it, then acceptance is the lack of judgment for all the things that occur. Think about this. Every possible experience, of course, I'm sure there's experiences that we have not yet had as human beings, but I think every possible experience that could be had is being had. All the things that we label, good, bad, right, wrong, happy, sad, all these things are occurring. Well, if this is a conscious universe, why? If you want to go a little more to the old school, and we talk about God, perhaps, I'm not saying that's not new thinking, but because it could be whatever it is for you. But if you think about people asking questions, and this is what I wrote about in the very first book, why would God allow bad things to happen? What if there are no bad things in God's eyes? So I think if you look at things from a universal perspective and you say, everything happens, that means not that the universe is accepting of those things. It means that the universe is acceptance, that consciousness is acceptance itself of all things. We can start by the things that you mentioned and more: self-acceptance, acceptance of others, acceptance of our place, acceptance of our past. All those things are part of the journey. But ultimately, those are actually accepting. So when you become more accepting of all those things, the people, places, and things in your life, then you've taken a step towards acceptance, which is the nature of reality. All the portals: awareness, acceptance, presence. All these are aspects of one, aspects of consciousness. As, again, the white light refracts into all the colors, consciousness refracts into all aspects of itself. And as we explore those, we come back to truth.
It's one of those that certainly was very eye-opening, even heart-opening to me, is this idea of when there is unconditional acceptance, as you're describing this unconditional acceptance, well, then there's nothing to accept.
And that's really the truth. In fact, the key word is unconditional.
Yeah.
What would it mean to be unconditionally accepting? In fact, what a great exploration for listeners right now. Unconditional acceptance, write it down. In what areas of your life are you unconditionally accepting? And after you stare at that paper for a month or two, at least then take the next step and say, well, what areas of my life could I be more accepting?
Yeah.
And then you can begin that process.
Yeah. Yeah. What would 1% more, 1% more look like, right? So
but it's just one idea.
Just one idea
that you can implement today that would allow you to experience more of acceptance in your life.
Exactly. So let's bring this around full circle, because we could chat obviously about the portals for, well, probably not just hours, but months. Let me ask you this, because I don't think I've asked you this one before. What has been maybe either your biggest surprise or your greatest joy in writing this book?
This book had two parts to it. One is a deep philosophical understanding of the nature of reality, who we are and why we are here. And the other is a fun, exciting adventure. The biggest surprise in all of this was that the latter part was so much easier for me to write. Mm. I've already written so many things with the first part. So all the nonfiction, the informative, the experiential, all the knowledge-based stuff, I've done that all my life. I've never really written a novel story before. And so the most pleasurable, the most exciting part was that I don't feel like I wrote it. I just kind of experienced what I was writing about, turned it off, and allowed it to write itself. And it was a breeze. The characters kept developing. The new ones that I needed kept popping in. They would talk to me. I couldn't wait to write the next part, to learn something. And it was the other part of it that was much more challenging, because blending the two was really the goal. So it didn't seem like a separate book. Getting that factual information, my experiential information, my truth, getting that to work with that beautiful, fun story was the challenge. The fact that it all came together was very satisfying. But again, the biggest surprise was how easy it was to write fiction for me.
Yeah. Excellent. So then just to bring it fully around, one of the things that I love asking guests, and now it's your turn to be able to get a question like this, is just simply, what is your hope for the conversation that people may start as a result of reading this book?
Well, you're not going to get an answer typical to that of any other guest you've had before.
I wouldn't have expected otherwise.
It doesn't matter.
Hmm.
That's not the purpose of the book. I can't have a hope because that means I have a goal, I have an attachment, I have a desire, I have an outcome. I share myself, I share my experiences. So do you. So does everybody. I'm not doing it to make anybody else's life better. I'm not doing it to make them fuller, happier, healthier, wealthier. I do believe those will be the results of all the things that come from this. But that's their journey, not mine. Mine's to simply share who I am and why I am here, which is simply to be and share all that I've experienced with others. What they do with it is completely up to them, and I honor whatever they choose to do with it. In fact, it reminds me of a story from the very first book, one of my favorite stories. I was at a book talk, and there was about 20 or 25 people in the audience. I know you've heard the story. It's just fascinating to me. And a woman came up to me after the talk with the book in her hand, and she said, "I just want you to know this is my favorite book." And I said, "Really? What do you like about it?" She said, "Oh, I've never read it. I carry it with me everywhere I go. It's just, I love the book. I love, the cover. It's something about it feels right to me, but, I just never, I'll read it one day." So who am I to judge, to decide what's best for someone else? Who is, what right do any of us have to really do that? We're all on our own journeys. Let's just have fun and enjoy ours.
Outstanding. Well, Bruce, I'm going to thank you for your first appearance here on One Idea Away. I know that you and I are probably going to be doing a variety of fun things with not just this show, but also with the community over the course of these next many years. And so thank you for joining us here on the show.
Thanks, Luke. Thanks for doing this.
For everyone, again, the name of the book is Uncovering the Life of Your Dreams. It actually is dropping imminently, so you can already get your copies ordered today on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, all the different places that you would expect. So you certainly take a look at that. Also, just another thought, because this is something that's been going on recently. Many of you have already probably heard. Bruce was also just recently on the Living the Dream Summit that we just hosted. And is actually wrapping up even this week as we broadcast this week. And so if you want access to Bruce's more detailed interview, some of the other great interviews, sessions, workbooks, bonuses, all that stuff, just head on over to livingthedreamsummit.com and you can find information on that as well. So check those things out. Guys, I want to thank you once again for dropping in on One Idea Away. And until next time, as always, continue to enjoy the journey. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you really enjoyed it, do me a favor, let us know. You can keep the conversation going and send us a message on our Facebook page, which is simply One Idea Away. Go ahead and tag me in the post or even just direct messages. Also, I would be incredibly grateful if you could share this episode along with someone that you believe could benefit from hearing the ideas and the messages that we got into. That's pretty much why we do this. So you can just go ahead and share it from your app or email it along, whatever works for you. The point is to share, to talk, to discuss, and keep the dialogue going, because it's in those conversations that ideas can take hold and create profound shifts in perspective. That's what allows us to live life more fully, deeply, and consciously. As always, we would love to see you post a review for the podcast in iTunes or whichever app you're using. And until next time, remember, you're never more than one idea away from a whole new reality. This is Luke Iorio and One Idea Away, signing off.